Select Board meeting. It's the Electoral Area Services meeting today. I'd like to begin our deliberations today with an acknowledgement that we are meeting on the territories of the Sechal Nation and the Squamish Nations, and we honor that. The agenda before us, do I see, or are there any additions, deletions, changes? Directors, I don't see any, so can I get a motion to pass that? So I see a mover, seconder, all in favor? And that is passed. Next, I'd like to just receive all reports in the agenda. Can I get a mover, seconder, all those in favor? And that passes. So our first item today is 4.1. It's the status update, integrating the 7 OCPs into one. And Planner Jackson, would you like to introduce that?
Thank you, Chair. This report presents early integration work to demonstrate at a technical level that it is possible to move to one OCP, which captures a coherent vision on the range of common regional themes, as well as providing clarity regarding the unique character that exists across the rural areas. Methods were established for conducting a comparative analysis of the 7 OCPs in order to develop a preliminary outline of an integrated OCP structure that would focus on the 2 pillars, meet legislative requirements, and build upon the findings of the Regional Growth Strategy baseline work. The Phase 1 integration work will test and enhance the findings of this preliminary integration work as we hear from our community about how we should grow over the next 20 years. And staff are here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Just waiting for our speakers list to pop up. And our first speaker today, Director McMahon.
Shoot, I should have been slower off the mark. This was really interesting. I was particularly taken by the agriculture. What is this? Land uses on page 16. Obviously, agriculture is important to Elphinstone, as you can see from that chart at the top of page 16, which is not surprising because 15% of Area E is in the ALR. So I'm looking forward. I've already been having discussions with people about the difference between agriculture and farm use, which is, wow, nitpicking. Another thing, though, that I was really struck by on page 18 was it 18? Yeah, mobile homes, mobile home parks. I believe Elphinstone is the only area with a mobile home park land use, or and so we have all these mobile home parks, and we also have RV parks. So how do we think the OCP update could address that?
Planner Jackson, are you able to answer that?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Part of the answer will come from the community consultation that we're undertaking currently and in the next 2 phases as well. At a high level, we do know that BC Building Code has some limitations around what it can facilitate in terms of how RV parks are used, whether they be formal ones that are actually, permitted to have a campground, or whether there are other ones that might exist throughout the area. Mobile home parks, though, or as we more typically call them in more modern languages, manufactured homes, those certainly do have a place. They are part of a stream of housing options, and they're one that we can consider as we look to the land uses that we might want to have in our new OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Director Bax.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really impressed with the cross-referencing of all the material in the different OCPs and how some of them align and what the differences are. I wanted to make sure that my community, my community association, and my official community planning committee are aware of this document, although most of them are taking a summer break. But my question is, as we seem to be moving down, getting more clarity on the layout, the format of this final OCP, I wonder if staff knows at this point in time what the separate area chapters, or whatever we want to call them, what kind of shape they're taking, if that's not vague enough of a question.
Is that something you can speak to at this point, staff?
Thank you, Chair. It's something that hasn't been formalized in terms of exactly what that structure will look like, and it's something that we will consider what the best options will be once we've heard from our community, including our APCs, for example, on what we think might actually be sort of the best things that we're trying to preserve in terms of local area character. And then another thing that kind of comes out when you look at this sort of integration piece is there might be actually opportunities where folks might say, oh, geez, I wish we had that policy in our community. And so they might actually, it might be different today, but they might actually want to sort of take it in. And so we'll have to consider those things more broadly to make sure that we're fully capturing where the community wants to go in terms of regional alignment, and then think about how to best capture those policies that will help to articulate regional differences. I could give one example. It might be, and there is a little bit of mention later on in this work to date around development permit areas. For example, you might choose to have form and character guidelines established for multifamily or commercial or industrial uses. And those are certainly one way that you can look at actually promoting different sort of neighborhood character or architectural flavor in your community. So there's lots of options, and we're open to discussing them as we move through the project. Thank you.
So along those lines, I'm very interested to see what we could do as communities to promote those parts of our OCPs that we think could apply to other areas, and talk to our try to make sure that the people in our communities realize that there are things in our OCPs, in the Roberts Creek OCP, that could apply to the Half Moon Bay OCP, and if we come to a consensus about certain aspects of our individual OCPs, then they could be integrated into the overall OCP that covers the entire Sunshine Coast. And I'm very interested in taking all the best of all the separate OCPs and integrating them into the one. And I'm just very interested in how we can express that to our constituents. If anybody has any ideas or any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it.
I think that's the intent. It makes sense to be looking for what the best is. I'm wondering also that as we go through this, for the directors to take opportunities to read other OCPs and find, if not structure, just readability, what makes an OCP connect with you. And it doesn't have to be ours, but other OCPs around communities like ours. For me, one of the priorities is to make it readable and make it relevant, so people will see it as a relevant document. So I'm looking at the more high-level structure of it, so people are interested to pick it up and go, what are the highlights that benefit us across the region? So, yeah. Director Gavious.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for this document. It's very interesting to see how, well, I mean, I guess it's not a surprise that we have a lot bind us together, and we share a lot of the same values from Howe Sound to Egmont. And the engagement that is currently happening will drill down a little bit about what makes every area unique. And so that, I mean, to me, that highlights the importance of the engagement. So I hope people do answer the questionnaire that is online and do participate in the events that staff will be at throughout the summer. So let staff know what makes your area unique, what you love about it, and what you'd like to preserve. My question to staff is, like, this is not a groundbreaking thing. There's other regional districts who have harmonized their OCPs, and I'm wondering if staff is engaging with these regional districts, with the staff there, to learn from their successes or what they wish they had known or what they could have done better.
Is that something that's happening? Planner Jackson?
Thank you. Through the chair, staff are certainly engaging with other local jurisdictions that have done this work. In fact, we wish we could take credit for this idea, but we can't. But we're certainly trying to build upon a good idea. That's part of this project, and so engaging with those jurisdictions is part of that. But also looking elsewhere too. I've heard some great synopsises of what we're trying to do in this early phase of this work. And really one of those pieces is actually trying to just hear from the community what they want, what is unique, what is similar, and trying to find the best way to collate that in a very user-friendly document. So that's sort of one of the lenses that we're also building on in addition to speaking with those other jurisdictions. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in as a first-time speaker. I was also delightfully impressed with that we have more in common with our neighboring OCPs than not. That's a relief, and I'm not surprised. And one of the things I did notice is that I think it's Twin Creeks is the only OCP with a marine zone in it. And I just wondered if the idea of having marine zoning across the region is something that we will be looking at in the future, given that we all have a marine aspect to our rural areas.
Thank you for the question. I was just checking, making sure that was a question. Certainly, and so part of this exercise and why we're doing this early is to make sure that it is clear the different options that we have throughout the communities and the different OCPs, so that if folks do have interest in something, that we can consider how to best implement that. So that is one of those things that we can certainly look at. It might be a big exercise, so it's something staff will have to take away. But again, this is why this is here, is because we are open to hearing. This first phase of engagement is really oriented around listening and meeting people where they're at, so that we can really listen to the different things that are going on throughout the heartbeat of the community and start to get some answers as to how to take the next steps on this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another question from Director McMahon?
Sure, you know me, I'm always full of questions. I was very struck by some statements on page 28, I think I'm at, that instead of a land use classification referring to residential, commercial, and industrial, for instance, we could create land use classifications like rural, which would include a mix of houses, outbuildings, agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. On the one hand, I go, wow, that makes sense, because that actually is the reality of what's going on out in our rural areas. But on the other hand, I can see the public being both confused and alarmed that if the zoning doesn't say residential, that they will not be protected from nuisance activities, adjacent to their properties. So I was curious if you could say a bit more about that and about how we would go about engaging with the public on this to kind of get the appetite for such what sounds to me like a radical change, although who knows, it may have been done elsewhere and I just don't know.
Manager Jackson, do you have a response?
Thank you for the question. So it certainly is early. This is one idea that we can consider as to how to manage land use. An example in terms of what it's trying to help assist would be lessening the number of rezonings that are needed to accommodate uses that we see happening anyways. or at least being proposed under the existing OCP. So right now, in many cases, the OCP policies might be broad enough that they might consider these uses, and so we'll see rezonings. But it's about thinking what that sort of practical threshold is that the community wants. So again, when we think about the type of uses that might become permitted in these sort of areas as we consider more mixed type uses within them, that will be tested against the public's wants, but then also thinking about, when we drill down a little bit too, it's about thinking about other types of land uses too, including commercial and residential, and how to best accommodate our housing needs as well. So those will all be community conversations that we'll be having, and certainly making sure that as we do it, that there's comfort with the process, and certainly a practical usability, thinking about the user friendliness moving forward, and clarity around what can and cannot happen in those areas. So early days, but we're certainly looking to test all of this with the community to make sure that they have the best set of options in front of them to consider the next 20 years of how we manage this. Thank you.
Follow-up?
Yeah, the term rural residential is a bit broad. And in my area, I have neighborhoods with very small lots, and I would describe them frankly as suburban, not rural residential. But it will be an interesting conversation, and because the density of the housing is an important factor in the allowable activities on properties. And it's becoming, I think, more challenging as we have more infill and more, build out in the rural areas. Thank you.
Director Bax.
Thank you. So one interesting conversation, getting information from our manager of planning on, I believe there's a zoning designation that's unique to Roberts Creek that's known as country residential. And I wonder if the manager could illuminate us on how a country residential zoning differs from rural or a residential.
Response on that, please.
Thank you. I'll stray away from getting into too much detail because I don't have the zoning bylaw in front of me, and there's actually a couple different categories of the country residential as well. But generally speaking, it does have a similar purpose to a lot of the rural zonings. Typically, it is often seen as a bit of a buffer around agricultural land reserve properties, where you see what some might coin as more of a suburban type of land use, but this is all part of the piece that we're trying to engage on as well, is sort of what do we define as rural, what is rural, what do we want rural to be in the future, and where is it similar across the regional district, and where might there be some nuances and differences that we need to account for. So that's all part of the questions that we're looking to answer as part of this round of engagement. Of course, when we come back with the second round of engagement, we'll have a bit more of a skeleton, but we'll still, in terms of a draft, but we'll still be looking to really try and test those pieces and figure out exactly, have we hit the mark? Do we need to do more work on it to figure out what is actually the desired land use category for a given area?
Yeah, follow up.
I just wanted to say that this is it. It's going to be very interesting to bring forward to our community the choices that they can make, and whether country residential is a zoning and all its sub-zonings are something that would fit throughout the region and be useful to our constituents.
Thank you. Director Lee, you haven't had a chance to speak, but you're comfortable with everything?
Thank you, Chair. No, I was going to put my hand up. I was listening. I found the report quite interesting, and how it went from complex to a couple of charts that explained it's possible and give me a really good idea of, yeah, we can merge these 7. They have a lot of things in common that I can see we can do it. And so it actually, I was going to say it gave me hope. I had hope. It explained that, yes, we can do it. So I think it's a great first step. And it also points out that land use is land use. We're trying to decide what's allowed to be done on the land. And unfortunately, we give it a bunch of different names and a bunch of different categories, but we're all doing the same thing somewhere in the country, in the rural country generally. And I think the people in Half Moon Bay want the same thing as the people in Pender and the people in Area F. So I think this would be interesting. But I think where the rubber hits the road is when we get down to one bylaw as well, because that is actually the implementation of the OCP. And that's when, and we'll be done when we get that done. So, but anyways, I'd like to thank staff for making a very complex subject readable and understandable. It was well done.
Thank you, Director. And I think it's always good to remind ourselves that in the end, this is a bylaw. So it's those have implications to them. So there's we just needed to receive the report, which we've done. There's no further decisions here. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to move on and thank you very much for staff. This was quite an interesting piece of work that we can now refer back to. It's a good reference tool as well. So our next item is timber sales. I've got the full title here. BCTS 2025 to 2029 Operating Plan Review. This is a meaty one.
Good morning.
Staff, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. BC Timber Sales, as the provincial management authority for timber harvesting on public lands, refers their operating plan to SCRD every year. And in saying that, I note that last year was an exception where there wasn't a referral. The process of response is guided by a communication protocol that was signed by BCTS and SCRD in 2014. Staff analyze harvest plans proposed by BCTS to assess, firstly, implications for SCRD services and assets, and secondly, implications for community interests as expressed in plans and policy, notably official community plans. The 2025 to 2029 plan that was referred to us contains 12 new cut blocks and 8 substantially redesigned blocks encompassing approximately 500 hectares. As in past years, analysis led staff to recommendations related to protection of community drinking water and impacts on downstream SCRD assets. Recommendations relating to protection and promotion of old-growth forest and sensitive ecosystems are provided. Process recommendations for referral to First Nations and municipality and for referral to APCs are made, and also that the recommendations of the report be forwarded to the Minister of Forests. Infrastructure GM Remco Rosenboom and report co-author and strategic planning coordinator Sierra Rempel are here as resources to the committee, and staff are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. I just would like to thank you again for the depth of this report. It was very enlightening, and it's also another example of how our departments all have to work together on these complex subjects because it impacts so many different parts of how we function as a regional district. So very interesting report. Directors, I have, should we start with questions of clarification? Director McMahon?
Sure. And I also greatly appreciated the map provided by staff because BC Timber Sales maps are a weird nightmare all of their own that I am ill-equipped to interpret. On page 7 of the staff report, there was a reference to this year's referral being very time-consuming for staff and required increased resources. And I was just wondering if you could tell me a little more about that.
Staff?
Yes, Chair. So the package of information that's provided to SCRD, the format of it, the completeness of it, and how data is organized has changed through the years. And staff have certainly been appreciative of the working relationship that we've had with BCTS, where we found optimal ways to provide them useful quality feedback based on having useful quality data inputs. This year things were different, and we were focused on addressing the need to respond to the referral. But as noted in the report, we intend to follow up to see how we can ensure that we're well placed to respond to any future referrals. Thanks.
Does that help for you? Okay. Director Bax.
Thank you. I went over this report at length, and I'm very grateful for the work that was done. And one of the things that I want to bring up first is that there were a couple of maps that were sent out. One that had the topography on it. That was 46,000 kilobytes, and the other one was about 6,000 kilobytes. These maps are they available to the public? I tried to share it with my alternate director, and I could not. And if they are not available to the public, can we make them available to the public? I know they were created through our GIS. And I ask if we need a motion to make them available to the public, because I compared the maps that we received with a very well-worn BC timber sales plan map that the principal for the stream keepers showed me, Shirley Samples, and these designations do appear with the other designations, the TA designations that are on the cut blocks, but it's very confusing to look at the maps that BCTS has released, comparing it to the maps that we've created. And so, and this is one of the points of confusion that I think that staff has come across. And so my point is, can we release these maps to the public?
I'll put that question through to staff. Corporate officer.
Thank you for the question. I think we'll have to get back to you on that, because I'm not certain of the format that these maps were created in. They're not just PDF documents that we can upload to the website, is my understanding. So we'll look into it, and if we can provide them in a format that we can upload to our website, I don't see any problem with sharing those.
So I see no other speakers, but Director McMahon is following up.
I'm sorry, this is a weedy question, but on our SCRD website, on the Zoom meeting links agenda page, there doesn't seem to be room for late items. Is there actually room on that page for late items, or how are late items being handled now? Because I thought the maps were going to be published as late items, so. We used to have, we'd add in items as they piled up on our meetings.
Response, corporate officer.
We do publish revised agendas. These maps that were sent out as a resource, they were created by the mapping division and uploaded to a share site, so they're not in a PDF format that are uploadable to the website, and that's something I can look into following this meeting. So when we do have late items, we publish them through the revised agenda.
Director Bax, do you have another question?
Yes, it's in my going over the report with other members of my community. I did contemplate amending the motion to add. There's already 4 cut blocks that feed into Roberts Creek, which is a salmon-bearing creek and which needs protection. But I understand that we don't have a fisheries in our functions, and that this report covers those things which are within our our functions, our delivery of water, and the other parts of the natural inventory that we have. And I would hope that that sometime in the future that we could recognize the importance of particularly the salmon spawning grounds in Roberts Creek that need protection. There was almost 5,000 sockeye returned there last year, and it's a very active fishery that needs protection. And there are, thankfully, there's 4 of the cut blocks that are mentioned, the SGZP, the NN5, the 008, and the 010 are all headwaters for Roberts Creek, and they are mentioned as part of our watershed, and I'm very grateful that they are included in this report. Thank you.
And maybe those are value statements the community can bring forward in the OCP process too, and really emphasize those principles. I'm going to go to Director Lee. He hasn't had a chance to speak on this subject yet.
Thank you, Chair. I was very impressed with the staff report and the way it was laid out. I printed the maps so I understood where the blocks were, and then I went over the 1 to 10 and made notes on the maps, and then correlated how some of them have 3 problems, or some have 1. I think this is the best report that I've read on this subject, and I don't know whether I'm just getting better at it, but I think it was just very much simplified and well done. And I wanted to make mention of something that was bothering me ever since we did the cut blocks in Egmont, and that is the need for a mitigation and monitoring plan. And I noticed it is spread throughout here, which I really appreciated seeing. So, thank you.
Director McMahon.
Thank you. And here on the monitoring, because this is one of the chronic problems we have, is that they simply log and walk away. And so nobody can prove what the consequences of the logging are. There was also a reference in the report to the operational resources for the SCRD to engage with BCTS. This is not new. We've been through this before, but with a lot of pressure to do more logging in this area in the next few years. I can see this indeed being an issue, because we have infrastructure that is at risk to these activities. So this sounds to me rather like a provincial responsibility that they aren't funding. And I'm just wondering if there is an area here for the board to do some advocacy with the province over, how to resource our need to interact with this pseudo-government agency. So does staff have any observations about that?
Who's best to answer that one? Director or Senior Manager Hall.
Thank you, Chair. The communication protocol that was signed between BCTS and SCRD does provide that either party can request a meeting and speaks to dispute resolution. I'm not careful not to characterize a change in referral format as a dispute, but staff would feel that there's follow-up at the staff level. That's a first step. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, I've got Director Bax, and is there another question from Director Lee? Okay, so we can take it. So Director Bax.
You want to speak? No? Yeah, okay. Well, if there's no one else wishing to speak on the discussion, then I'm going to move the, before I move, I'm going to allow Director McMahon to speak, I guess.
Yeah, we're just going to talk on process a little bit, because they are very complex motions, so my suggestion would be to consider looking at these separately. But if Director McMahon has a different idea, we can go ahead.
Well, I just had one or two nitpicks that, for instance, in recommendation I, it badly needs a comma before the word without in order to make it readable. I read that about 4 times before I figured out the sentence. So plant communities, comma, without a diligence plan. That helps with the sentence. In J, the last sentence is an incomplete sentence. So if we could just, tidy up 1 or 2 things. And I don't, maybe, do we want to go through them by?
Well, it depends if there's any adjustments you're thinking of, or if there's a general, or if we could just remove the ones that people have concerns about and then discuss those separately. But just to make sure that those punctuation items for clarity have been covered, thank you, Christy. And there were no additional ones we want to talk about. Director Lee, did you have a comment? So what we're doing is just the motions are there. We haven't moved them yet. We're just making some corrections.
Yes, I was trying to figure out my hand here, but just when I thought I had it. I like the motions the way they are, mostly because we're going to be referring them to our APCs, and we've got a lot of concerned experts at our APCs that will be coming back with suggestions for improvement. And so I think rather than start here, we should wait till then and do it again.
And Director McMahon, you have another comment?
I agree with Director Lee that probably now is not the time to dive into the precise wording other than, commas. But that I'm wondering if this should also be referred to our MLA, who is the Minister of Walrus, because this is an important issue about water. And so I'm wondering if that should be added to recommendation 5.
Could we make that a separate motion? I see them all as lettered out as recommendation number 2.
Sorry, recommendation 5 is the letter to the Minister of Forests.
I'm only looking at what I see is just the actual motion that we're looking at right now. So,
it's in eScribe, it shows up as and further that, the last and further that.
Okay, thank you. So we don't even have this on the floor yet. So I can have somebody move this, and we don't need to second it at this point, and then we can make some adjustments. So, okay, so Director McMahon is going to move the recommendations, and what kind of adjustment would you like to make?
Do we need to do the housekeeping adjustments like commas? Or
No,
can we
those are
let
already
that
done.
go? Great. Okay, then I would also move that we add the Minister of Walrus to the final recommendation.
And further that SCRD write a letter to the Minister of Forest to have,
And to the Minister of Walrus to advocate for the recommendations in this report.
have you got that? Okay, let's just hold off on seconding right now. So any other little adjustments before we second this, and then we can talk about the motions as a whole? I see none, so do I have a seconder for the recommendations for 4.2? Director Gabius is a seconder. Does anyone have any comments about the motion that is now before us? Director McMahon?
Oh, no,
Okay.
ignore me.
Just for the people in the audience, I'm going to be making this excuse for the next year. We have a new software system, so I can see names popping up on my screen that don't necessarily correspond to anything. So I just like to be clear. So a very comprehensive series of recommendations here that include forwarding this report to our APCs. So there'll be more engagement with this. And it is really exciting to see using our OCPs, using our communities, and also independent groups, the associations that have all put information in towards this. So I see no more questions or comments, so I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. Unanimously. Yes, you can.
Thank you. And so the motion about referring this to the APCs, so it's not, they're not going to make recommendations to the board. They're actually going to send their feedback directly to BCTS. Is that correct?
Staff, how's that going to work?
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate that this answer may bear on the committee's interest in making any further amendments to these recommendations. APC meetings this month are scheduled for July 28th and 29th, which is following the board meeting next week. So what staff proposed to do, as we have done in prior years, is to collate comments from APCs and forward them along with whatever the board's recommendations are from next week's board meeting, noting that the minutes from those APC meetings will flow to a board meeting and that there may be further comments. So being clear about where in the process those APC comments are, and BCTS has been receptive to that approach in the past. Thank you.
Great, that's good to know with the way the timelines have been described to us, so that's a good way of working through it. Thank you very much, everybody. That was one of our big ones today. The next item is the Agricultural Land Commission. It's application for, sorry, again, what's in front of me here. Application 103562, and that's 1772 Storvold Road in Area F. And I'm just going to briefly, before we start, in case people are interested, that outline that the Agricultural Land Commission is a provincially created body charged with administration and enforcement of the Agricultural Land Reserve regulations. Applications to the LC are referred as a first step to local governments to check generally just with conformance with local OCP zoning and other bylaw regulations. Our SCRD's role when we are referred the ALC application is just to assess whether it fits within our OCP regulations. If it does, we then respond we are okay with the application being considered by the ALC for their decision. The LC will consider the ALR regulations in their decision-making process. So that's sort of the role that we have in the next two reports. So having that, planners, if you'd like to introduce this report, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The SCRD received this referral from the ALC regarding an application seeking to retain unauthorized fill on a 1.75 hectare property in Electoral Area F, West Howe Sound. The applicant had previously submitted an ALC application, which was subsequently denied by the ALC. They have now made a new application, which includes an agricultural capability report. Staff have evaluated the application based on conformance with the SCRD Agricultural Area Plan, the West Howe Sound OCP, and Zoning Bylaw 722. As the proposal conforms to zoning and the SCRD policies, staff recommend forwarding the application to the ALC for review and decision. Staff are here to answer any questions.
Directors, any questions? Oh, okay. I'm going to start with Director McMahon and then go to Director Bax after. Okay.
This is a curiosity question, so I appreciate the staff may not know the answer. But when there is a placement of fill, is the property owner required to give the source of that fill? I don't believe it's an issue on this particular property, but in other properties that I've seen, the fill contaminated with knotweed has been placed. And of course, that's a bit of a nightmare. So just curious. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. My understanding is that when an applicant makes an application through the ALC portal, one of the questions is around the source of the fill, and so I believe that is in the application summary that is given to the ALC and the SCRD.
Director Bax, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I see that according to this report, that the quality of the soil that's been added to this property is actually higher than the quality of the soil that's existing there. And it's quite a large amount. And so I was wondering, where did that soil come from? It was most likely from some type of soil supply company. And I was wondering if these soil supply companies are familiar with the rules around putting fill in ALR land, and whether or not they are in a position to educate some of their customers to perhaps avoid this type of thing in the future. I know it's not their place really, but if I was a business owner, and I'd want happy customers that didn't get into trouble for this kind of work, and I would make sure that they knew what they were doing. And so, if somebody buys 15 truckloads of soil, where are they putting it? And shouldn't they know that that there are restrictions? Anyway, it looks like what they've done is augmented their farming capabilities within this property with a better quality soil. Anyway, my question is, it's not really a question.
So if I interpret correctly to staff, is there any history or culpability of the soil providers putting soil into ALR land? Is this a common situation that you know of? So if it's not appropriate, by all means, we can look it up ourselves.
Thanks for the question. The Agricultural Land Commission is the one that enforces the fill placement on ALC, ALR properties. So they're the ones that would be responsible for ticketing if there was a ticket to be issued. To my knowledge, I've typically heard of it being the property owner being found responsible. So this is another one of those education campaign sort of things that they exist across many jurisdictions of government in terms of the different regulations that we have. And so this one is specifically more with the Agricultural Land Commission. And certainly it's a big thing and one that we try to avoid, but it's also just a simple task of owners really checking with the planning department before they do significant land alterations to their property. So it's probably the best one. So it kind of fits under that larger land alteration piece. And so it's the landowner's responsibility. Thank you.
Director McMahon.
Thank you. I just have a comment on the recommendations here. The second recommendation says that the SCRD is supportive of forwarding this application. We're actually forwarding the application. We don't need the words is supportive of. We are. So I would make the motion for those recommendations with striking the words supportive of.
And did you get that? It's after the and that SCRD. Okay. And so do I have somebody who'd like to put a motion up? You did? Okay. With that correction, we have a seconder with Director Gabius. Any other comments about this file? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. So now we're moving on to 4.4, which is the Agricultural Land Commission application 103411 for 916 North Road, again, electoral area F. Staff, would you like to introduce this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The SCRD received this referral from the Agricultural Land Commission regarding a non-adhering residential use application on a 2.3 hectare parcel at 916 North Road in Electoral Area F, West Howe Sound. The purpose of the application is to classify the existing principal home as the primary residence, to retain the second dwelling as an additional residence, and to decommission the manufactured home. Staff have evaluated the application based on conformance with zoning bylaw 722 and the ALC housing regulations and recommend forwarding the application to the ALC for review and decision. Staff are happy to answer any questions.
Directors, do you have any questions? Well, I'll put myself on the speaker's list. Out of interest, when somebody is asked to remove or is removing a manufactured home, what are their options on how to do that and where does it go? And if the planners don't have an answer, maybe I can be directed to somebody who would have that kind of information. Senior Manager Hall.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing to say is that a building permit for demolition is required, or decommissioning. Okay. And staff understand that there are material recovery opportunities associated with that process, and then it's up to the owner whether they demolish, deconstruct, or relocate a structure. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other directors, this is an area F, like everything else so far. So I would like to move the motion as presented. I do, again, I also agree with this word supportive. I think it's a yes or no, more of an answer. So I'm going to leave it for now. But I think from now on, I need to be more careful with how the wording is. And it's just that our policies aren't in line with what is being requested, is more the angle that we're taking. So for now, I think I'll just leave the recommendation as is. Do I have a seconder? Director Lee, any other comments or questions? It's very quiet in here. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I would like to see the wording changed on these, because when it says we're supportive, it sounds like we're supporting the application, and that's not really what we're doing. We are forwarding the application because we are not agricultural experts, and we don't claim that. So I just like a slightly more neutral wording. Thank you.
But just confirming for now, we'll leave this particular motion the way it is. Yeah. Okay, I see no other questions or comments. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that passes. Thank you very much. Our next item is also in Area F, Keats Landing Dock Major Repair Budget Increase and Contract Award. Start. And GM Gagnon, you're going to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, our ports coordinator is unavailable to be here today. So if at the Chair's indulgence, just a little bit of history. So in 2021, funding was approved for major repairs on 5 of our ports, including Keats Landing. The work didn't progress until after COVID and when we were able to secure a full-time resource for ports. The priority repair on Keats was to replace the float, which was completed in late 2023, leaving a balance of about $93,000 for other priority remediation work. Concurrently, we were doing our major condition assessments on the dock, and it confirmed other major structural repairs that were required, and in fact identified structural integrity issues, and so the dock was closed to vehicular traffic in October of 2023. The balance of the previously approved budget allowed for us to move forward to attain engineered drawings and a cost estimate to complete the project. A staff report in 2024 identified the budget estimate needed to move the project through to completion, and based on board direction, we brought forward a 2025 budget proposal for a budget lift to a total of $361,500. In the spring of 2025, when we moved from detailed design to issue for construction to specifications, when those were complete, we also got an updated cost estimate on the project from the engineer. Staff came forward again in the spring, this past spring, identifying the likelihood that the tendering process for the construction service would see proposals submitted that exceeded the approved budget. The scope of the project could not be reduced as it was designed to support the necessary repairs to reinstate the load-bearing capacity of the dock to permit vehicular access once again. So as the report in front of you indicates, additional funding is indeed required to complete this project and award the construction contract. Staff recommendations are provided in the report, and I'm happy to answer questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Gagnon, for that, because I think it reminds us that in each situation we were provided fairly clear parameters of what we were being asked to pay for. The first part was the planning and the engineering reports, and then subsequently we were made aware that these increases could be expected. Not that it's great, but I also need to very briefly just remind people how important this particular dock is to Keats, and it is basically the only area they can pull large items up out of the water because it has a crane on it. So it continues to be a source of serious difficulty for the community and the camps as they try and negotiate through the summer seasons. So, Director McMahon, do you have any comments?
Oh, I have comments, but I'm going to save some of them for the new Brighton report, which is the can of worms. On page 109, there was discussion of funding it either through reserves or short-term debt. And I was just wondering, what are the pros and cons of going for short-term debt versus drawing down our reserves?
GM Gagnon? Oh, yes. CEO Pearl?
CFO hat. Really, we just wanted to provide options to the directors. The considerations are we do not have a clear roadmap for the long-range capital requirements for the port service. So although it looks like there's a sufficient amount of reserves, we can see that they are very costly when these instances happen. So we did want to provide a different option in order to be prepared when that particular plan comes forward. And in accordance with that, we provide a funding recommendation as well. So we just wanted to provide both options. Obviously, taking debt, you'll incur some interest payments, but either option is in front of you for consideration.
Follow-up?
I'm just wondering what the interest rates are on borrowing these days, roughly.
For short term, they're variable, so they fluctuate with the Canada Bank rate. They're usually lower than any other rates with MFA, and sort of they are quite favorable. I'd have to look online to see what they are currently, but it would be dependent on what they would be when we would actually action the loan.
And Philip?
Sorry, I'm back thinking about reserves, and there are times where we need to, like if we apply for a grant, that we might need to provide matching funding. So is that one of the values of keeping healthy reserves?
Yes, as well as being able to respond quickly to operational impacts. And so we don't have a clear funding strategy for our port service, so that's really needed. And so capital reserves are very restrictive. They can only be used for capital repairs. So or capital renewal and capital things that extend the useful life of the asset. And so we want to make sure that we have an operational strategy as well. And so whenever you have no money, it's a little more restrictive in what your capabilities are to react to instances.
Thank you. I wish we had discussed this because it might have been a good option, or it still could be. And I'm just making a comment that, again, this really emphasizes how important it will be to have our ports strategy in place. We need it to inform so much, especially today, and it is so critical to everything we're doing in this part of our infrastructure priorities. So, Director McMahon, do you have any ideas on how we can adjust this? Because I'm certainly willing to look at it.
Well, I just wanted to draw the other director's attention to page 109, where the debt servicing costs on short-term debt are shown, and in the case of Area E, it would be 23 cents per $100,000 of assessed value on properties. That's not very much, and I think given the uncertainty around the port's function, it might be prudent for us to consider the short-term debt funding option. So that would require us modifying the first recommendation, which says through capital reserves, and changing it through short-term borrowing.
So funded through short-term borrowing. We don't have to specify that it's ports. How would that work? GM Gagnon.
Thank you, Chair. I think the recommendations are laid out on page 109. If you decide to change to short-term funding, I think they carry on to page 110, which would basically, you just effectively replace the staff recommendations with this one. Thank you.
So I'm looking on eScribe version, and it's not on the same page. So.
It's between page 3 and 4 of the staff report. So it's option.
Would you like to, should we take a short break and just get this cleared up? So we'll just break for 5 minutes and make this clear. Thank you. I'm just going to put myself on really briefly because I haven't had a chance to speak to this. We were given a presentation about the importance of CDF. It is a unique system. It is extremely rare. To have it pointed out and placed in our OCP process, I don't think is jumping the gun. It doesn't necessarily fit within specific community engagement points. I don't want to see it get lost. I don't think it'll necessarily mean that everything comes through a notice of motion this way. So I will be supporting it. Director McMahon.
Yeah, I don't want this to get lost either, but I'm concerned because we have a lot of community groups that are very invested in particular issues, that we may have a whole series of delegations, each coming to say, you know, you've got to get our concern into the OCP, and I just don't think that's the ideal process going forward.
Director Gabius, you'd like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to the directors for voicing your concerns. This motion, I don't find it prescriptive per se. I think it's really a signal to staff to look into how does this fit? How does living in such a sensitive ecosystem, so rare, how does this fit with growth? Like, how do we manage both so that we can still grow as a community, but grow smartly and within and without sacrificing this precious endangered zone that actually impacts mostly Half Moon Bay. I think there's a place for directors to point out what is important. Again, not trying to get in the way of engagement, and this is not binding in any way. Yeah, and if delegations want to come and tell us what's important, I think that's fine. We don't have to incorporate everything. We don't, there's different mechanisms, different way that we can voice support or for these things. So I don't see this as being too early. I think it will come at some point, and why not do it now? Yeah, thank you.
Director Bax, do you have anything further?
Oh, I kind of like the idea that our community would come to us, especially with the backing of the science that's behind this report, and express to us the need for the protection of certain things within our area. And so after listening to the other directors, I'm no longer on the fence.
I'm just going to make a final comment that one of the unusual things about this particular presentation that we had is it's an external designation. And it's externally saying this particular area in Half Moon Bay is important. And how do we then accommodate input from interest parties outside of our OCP communities? So that's one of the reasons I'm thinking of it. So with no further, I see no further hands. I'd like to call the question. All those in favor? And that passes, but all those not in favor, would you like your decision recorded? I have shrugs for recording. So it does pass. Thank you very much. So moving forward, we have no new business. There is no in camera. So I'd like to call a motion to adjourn this meeting. And I have motion, seconder. All those in favor? Thank you. And then I would like to put out to the floor any questions or comments about this meeting from the public. And if you'd like to come forward to the microphone and state your name and the area you live in.
My name is Miyuki Shinkai. I am Area F APC member and a West Hausan Community Association member. My question is around 4.2 BCT timber sale, 2025-2029 operating plan review. Thanks staff for preparing such a thorough report and links and OCP items that reflected to the community values. I actually had a chance to look at all the past report because of the link existed, 2019 to 2023 reports, and it's all well written, but this one is particularly had more people worked on with our community voice reflected from Community Association hours, as well as at Elphinstone Community Association and Roberts Creek Community Association. So I really thank the SAD board passing a motion to support that report. And I'm looking forward to have the APC to have more input, as well as it's lots of learning. In our areas, there's 4 or 5 proposed cut blocks, which a lot of people don't know anything about it. My question is, so for thinking of the precedent or the past time frame, is there anything timber sales coming back to SCRD about after referral is made, or is it just the performative checklist? Okay, referral is done, they're going to move on no matter what. I just wondered about the process, when to look out and what to pay attention to as a community member. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'm wondering, is there anyone in the room that would be able to respond to what the next steps are with BC timber sales in relation to this report? How do they respond? GM Hall?
Happy to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
There have been a variety of types of response through the years. Sometimes we receive updates. I believe that the communication protocol does oblige BCTS to provide us with updates if they make changes to their operating plan. So that's one way that we sometimes hear about how our comments have been addressed. We've also had memos or other forms of communications from BCTS staff, and we've also had BCTS appear as a delegation in prior years. And the timing for all of those, and indeed the timing for referral of the operating plan, varies by months in every cycle, in my experience.
Thank you very much. That helps us inform what we can expect back. Do we have anyone online that would like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I am promoting a Shirley Samples, if she can accept.
Ms. Samples, would you like to speak? And let us just know what area you're calling from, and you can ask questions or make comments. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Thank you. My name is Shirley Samples. I'm in Area D. I'm the president of Sunshine Coast Streamkeeper Society. And I just want to thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I also, first of all, want to thank the planners that took so much care and efforts in writing the report that you adopted today. I also want to thank the SCRD members, the area's directors that accepted the report and are standing up to oppose the cut blocks that are above all of our various communities. And I firmly believe that in the past we've seen that we've experienced definite results of that logging, and if they continue to log, it will put so many things in our wonderful community at risk. I also want to appreciate that my area director Kelly brought into the discussion today about one of the main ecological values of the Sunshine Coast. And I know he mentioned Roberts Creek. And as president of the Sunshine Coast Streamkeepers, I really felt I needed to speak to this today. I've been for 8 years monitoring and the water quality and also counting the salmon in Roberts Creek. So I have extremely close connection to that wonderful creature that we get to share and observe. So what I was surprised about was when I read the report and I talked to Kelly, and then we got some feedback that salmon doesn't correlate to any of the, I'm sorry, I'm probably not using the right words, but it doesn't really qualify to be listed on the report today. And so that really surprised me. And also I have to admit, I'm not familiar at all with procedures and what can and can't be included. But I really wanted to make a point that if something like our ecological values aren't on par as, say, a bridge, then I really would love to see some kind of change in that. And I know I was told that in that OCPs and et cetera, but it still doesn't feel clear to me that why something like that isn't included. And then my other point I wanted to make is that I want to thank the CSCRD again for speaking up for the communities, because in my experience with dealing with BCTS, and I have had on numerous meetings, site visits, lots of dialogue with them, and then also tried to help the public use their outreach programs like the FOM that they have yearly, which is an absolute difficult program for most people to use. And so what I did this last year was I just encouraged people who wanted to make a comment to just send in an email. So then I want to comment on the latest BCTS operating plan and how they asked the public to use their platform. And I have to say it is extremely clunky. It's not user-friendly. The maps aren't useful at all. Just like Kelly said today, there's so much confusion about the numbers. The numbers that I've been using with BCTS staff are completely different than the numbers that are on the maps, but they're asking the public to comment on. And I just really, that's one of the reasons I really appreciate that you're doing this, because it doesn't feel like it's an easy thing for the community to give BCTS our input or our reasons that we don't want them to log in our headwaters. And so I just want to thank you very much for you to speak for us. And also I want to say this for you for in the future and in finding ways that we can speak for wild salmon. So thank you very much for letting me say this today. And thank you again.
Thanks so much. And I will turn to staff to see if there is any response, or to the directors about, okay. I was just looking at whether or not there was a response to your question. We don't really have the resources in the room right now to respond specifically, but we do really appreciate your comments. And certainly the values that you spoke to, we'll keep working through our official community plan process. So thank you again. Director Bax would also like to follow up.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Samples. This is and I love the work that you're doing, and I look forward to seeing how you can share this information with our community and encourage people to make comments in our OCP renewal process.
So is there anybody else in the gallery? Or great. So I'd like to close the meeting. Thank you.